The Shackleton expedition, also known as the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition, is one of the greatest stories of survival, leadership, and determination in the history of exploration. Led by the renowned British explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton, this ambitious expedition set out to achieve a groundbreaking feat, crossing the entire Antarctic continent from one side to the other. Although the mission did not go as planned, and Shackleton never achieved his original goal, the story of how he and his men survived against all odds in one of the most brutal environments on Earth has captivated generations. Their tale is one of extraordinary resilience, teamwork, and the unyielding human spirit. Ernest Shackleton was no stranger to exploration. Having previously undertaken successful expeditions to the South Pole, he was an experienced polar explorer. But Shackleton had bigger dreams. He wanted to be the first to cross the entire Antarctic continent. The idea of being the first to achieve such a monumental feat was a powerful draw for Shackleton. But there were other motivations too. Shackleton believed that completing this journey would not only cement his place in history, but would also advance the scientific understanding of Antarctica and, perhaps, secure further funding for future explorations. His plan was ambitious, and it was to be a journey that would test the limits of human endurance. Shackleton envisioned traveling from the Weddell Sea on the eastern side of Antarctica to the Ross Sea on the western side. This route would require them to cross the heart of the continent, a place no human had ventured before. Shackleton's original goal was not only to cross Antarctica, but also to gather scientific data along the way, helping to further the exploration of one of the most remote and mysterious places on Earth. To achieve this, Shackleton needed a team of men who were not only physically capable, but who also shared his spirit of adventure and courage. He carefully handpicked a crew that included experienced polar explorers, scientists, and men from various walks of life. Many of them were willing to face extreme hardship and even death in the pursuit of this daring goal. Together, they boarded the ship Endurance in 1914, ready for the challenges that lay ahead. The Endurance set sail from England in August 1914, just as the First World War was breaking out across Europe. Although the war threatened to delay or even cancel the expedition, Shackleton decided to push forward with the mission, hoping to complete it before the conflict intensified. The ship made its way to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and from there, crossed the South Atlantic Ocean, reaching the frozen shores of Antarctica in early 1915. The expedition was about to face challenges much greater than anyone had anticipated. Shackleton's original plan was to land on the coast of the Weddell Sea and begin their overland trek towards the Ross Sea. However, as soon as they reached the ice, the crew realized that the conditions were far more severe than expected. The Weddell Sea is notorious for its thick, shifting ice flows, which can easily trap ships. No matter how well prepared the crew might have been, they were at the mercy of the ice. Despite their best efforts to navigate through the ice, the Endurance was caught almost immediately and became completely immobilized. This unexpected turn of events was the beginning of a desperate fight for survival. Shackleton, known for his leadership and resourcefulness, soon had to adjust the expedition's goals. Instead of making the journey across the continent, he now had to focus on keeping his crew alive in one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth. The Endurance was stuck in the ice, and it soon became apparent that the crew would be trapped for much longer than anyone had anticipated. With winter approaching, the situation grew increasingly dire. The ice flows in the Weddell Sea are notoriously thick and unyielding, and the temperatures during the Antarctic winter can drop to extreme levels, often below 34 degrees Celsius. The constant winds made it feel even colder, and with no means of escape, the crew had to wait and hope for a break in the ice that would allow them to continue their journey. As the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months, the crew of the Endurance had to find ways to stay occupied and keep their spirits up. Shackleton's calm and determined leadership were crucial to maintaining morale. Despite the freezing conditions, Shackleton made every effort to keep his men busy with tasks such as dog sledging, hunting seals, and making sure everyone remained physically active. His focus was on ensuring that no one gave up, even as the ice trapped them. As the months passed, the situation grew increasingly desperate. The Endurance was not just stuck in the ice, it was being crushed. The shifting ice floes pushed and squeezed the ship, causing its hull to buckle. Shackleton knew that the ship could not survive much longer in its current condition. In November 1915, after months of being stuck in the ice, Shackleton made the difficult decision to abandon the ship. The Endurance was destroyed by the crushing ice, sinking into the freezing waters, leaving the crew stranded on the ice floes with nothing but their courage and determination to rely on. After the loss of the Endurance, Shackleton and his men faced an entirely new challenge: survival on the ice. With no ship and no transportation, they set up camp on the shifting ice floes, hoping to find a way to reach land. Their food and supplies were limited, and the situation was becoming more and more dangerous as the ice continued to break apart. The men were vulnerable to the elements, and the bitter cold made it even more difficult to stay alive. In the absence of a ship, Shackleton's leadership became even more critical. He needed to keep the men focused on survival, maintaining their spirits, and reminding them of the importance of staying united. Despite the freezing temperatures and constant danger, Shackleton refused to give up. His leadership was characterized by his unwavering determination to keep his men alive. He often made decisions that were not only practical, but also motivated by the belief that they could survive as long as they stayed together. The ice floes that surrounded the men were dangerous and unpredictable. Sometimes the ice would shift and break apart, leaving the men stranded in the middle of the sea. The crew had to constantly move to stay ahead of the ice, but every day seemed to bring new challenges. Food was rationed, and the men became weaker with each passing day. Shackleton knew that their chances of survival depended on quick thinking, careful planning, and, most of all, strong leadership. In February 1916, Shackleton realized that the ice was becoming even more unstable. The crew's location was no longer safe, and it was clear that they would need to escape before the ice broke up entirely. Shackleton made a bold decision. They had to attempt a journey to land, even though they had no idea if help would ever arrive. Shackleton's plan was to sail to the nearest land, South Georgia Island, a remote island located more than 800 miles away. The Southern Ocean, which lay between the ice floes and the island, is notorious for its violent storms, freezing temperatures, and treacherous seas. Crossing this dangerous stretch of water would be one of the most challenging feats of navigation and survival in history. Shackleton chose to take a small lifeboat, the James Caird, and selected 5 of his most capable and determined men to accompany him. These men had to be physically strong and mentally resilient because the journey across the Southern Ocean would push them to their limits. The boat was small and cramped, and the sea conditions were unforgiving. They would be exposed to freezing temperatures, towering waves, and violent storms, with little more than their courage and skill to see them through. For 16 days, Shackleton and his men battled the elements. The seas were rough, with waves that reached as high as buildings, and the winds were so strong that they threatened to capsize the tiny boat. Despite the odds, Shackleton and his crew pressed on. The journey was grueling, and they faced moments of near despair, but they never gave up. Finally, after 16 days, they reached the shores of South Georgia Island. Their survival was nothing short of miraculous. Even though they had reached land, their ordeal was far from over. The men found themselves on the uninhabited, mountainous side of the island. To reach the whaling station on the opposite side, where they could get help for the rest of the crew, they had to cross a range of treacherous mountains. Shackleton, knowing how critical it was to return to rescue the others, immediately set off with 2 companions, leaving the others to wait for help. The journey across the mountains was incredibly difficult, with steep, icy slopes, and the men in a weakened state after their long journey at sea. But Shackleton's determination drove him forward. After several exhausting days, Shackleton and his companions finally reached the whaling station. From there, Shackleton was able to contact help and organize a rescue mission for the rest of his crew. It took several months before Shackleton could return to the ice and bring every member of his team to safety. But in the end, not a single man died during the entire ordeal. Shackleton had done what seemed impossible. He had kept his crew alive against all odds. Though Shackleton never achieved his original goal of crossing Antarctica, his expedition became legendary, not for its failure, but for the courage, determination, and leadership that allowed his crew to survive. The Shackleton expedition is remembered as one of the greatest tales of human endurance, not only in the history of exploration, but in the history of mankind. Shackleton's leadership was the key to the crew's survival. His ability to inspire trust, hope, and loyalty in his men, even when all seemed lost, was unparalleled. His refusal to accept defeat, his careful decision-making under pressure, and his unwavering belief in his crew's ability to survive made all the difference. The story of the Shackleton expedition serves as a timeless reminder that, even in the face of the most impossible odds, survival is possible if we remain united, resourceful, and determined. Shackleton's incredible story continues to inspire adventurers, leaders, and everyday people. It shows us that no matter how bleak the situation may seem, if we never give up, if we work together, and if we lead with strength and compassion, there is always hope.